Hey, it's Eric Nance here. Welcome to Dark Side of Therapy podcast. And today we're going to talk about a book, one of my favorite all-time therapy books, which is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. This is a book that was written a long time ago, 1946. So you might be asking, what is the relevance for a book written that long ago? Well, for a therapist, I think it's very relevant because, first of all, it's a book that's about meaning, purpose, and vulnerability. Now, Viktor Frankl is a Holocaust survivor, was a Holocaust survivor. He's since passed. And the book outlines the experience of what it means to him to be a Holocaust survivor. Okay? The book is meaningful because it details, again, everything he went through, the highs, the lows, and ultimately getting through the experience and being able to have a purposeful life. So I first read this book as a sophomore in college. A friend actually gave it to me. I had no interest at that point in the Holocaust and really no interest in being a therapist. I was a psychology student, but I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. So I sat one evening and I just read the book. And that was one of the first times in my life I actually read a book start to finish that captivated me outside of a golden book that I read when I was like 7 or 8. And it resonates with me to this day. And it wasn't until I got to grad school that the book was required reading, and all this came back to me. All the words I had read, all the visions in the book, and it was just wonderful. And I said to myself at that point when I was in grad school, at some point, I'm going to use this book as a teaching tool to help people, to help clients, to help colleagues, to help myself. And today's a great opportunity for me because I get to share that with you. The first part of the book, I would say the first half, is all about Viktor Frankl's experience in Auschwitz. And there are so many memorable scenes and words that I can't recount them all now, but I'm going to give you a couple of the highlights. One of the things he talks about is watching people die. This is a man who watched family members die, watched friends die on a daily basis. A typical day for him is getting up, having slept on a dirt floor, minimal clothing, maybe a torn up shirt, something like that, and getting to work at the crack of dawn, digging. They did a lot of digging. They were always digging trenches. Working with metal in the machine shop. And that's all you did. You got up and worked under the worst conditions. One story he recounts is looking at the feet of other men and women around him. Gangrenous feet, okay? It's so cold, frostbite, watching limbs fall off. I mean, just unimaginable stuff. And that was every single day. Being fed maybe some soup. And think about this. You're working so hard, 10, 15 hours a day, you come back, you're given very little food. I mean, how do you sustain through this? And again, a lot of people didn't. He watched people die every single day. He also recounts the story of working out on one of the crews. And one of the guards up on the hill had this habit of picking up rocks and throwing the rocks at the different workers every single day. And Frankl said one day he remembers a friend of his getting pelted, and then a friend over here getting pelted. And Frankl says, I never got hit with a rock that day. And he realized, I mean so little to this guard that he's not even willing to hit me with a rock. I have no purpose to this man. He also talks about weather. Weather's a huge theme in the book. It was never warm there. It was cold every single day. And having to huddle at night with his crew members, his family, that's what they worked in. Just complete misery and discomfort. Now, here's a very important principle that I think you can take away and use almost immediately. Dignity. Most of us have a sense of dignity. We go to work, we feel good about ourselves, we're family people, we take care of our responsibilities, we're dignified in these things. What Frankl talks about that really strikes me is lack or loss of dignity. Loss of dignity. So for him to be naked in a group of his peers, friends, family even, he said it wasn't a big deal anymore in Auschwitz because we had lost so much of our dignity, there was no more to lose. Now just think about that. You have no more dignity to lose. It's staggering. So how do you get through an experience like this? I've often asked this. My mom was a huge researcher of the Holocaust, never could answer the question, how did people get through this? And so Frankl, a psychiatrist, would take notes. He would watch people, kept daily journals of who's surviving and who's not. And he finally figured out the people that made it through, the people that survived Auschwitz, were the people who found purpose in their suffering. What a concept. Finding purpose in your suffering. And how do you do that? Well, some people thought about what it would be like to return home, just to live in the town they came from. Other people thought about what it would feel like to have a hot meal, pleasing those taste buds. Other people thought about their children. And so he watched these people day after day. If they had purpose in their suffering, they found a way to get through it. If they didn't, they succumbed to death. And so eventually the war was over. Frankl got away. He did survive. And he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And again, the part of the book that I really want to impress upon you is finding meaning and purpose in suffering. Because obviously it can be done because it happened. And so as a psychiatrist, he would imply this or use this with his own clientele. He said, forget all the strategies and the techniques. Let's focus on purpose. Because he began to realize a lot of the people he worked with that were pathological, or as they said back in those days, had a neurosis, really lacked purpose. So a lot of his therapy became about, how can I help you find purpose in your life? What a great thing. And people really enjoyed that, whether it's being a parent or with your work. So this is 1946. Pretty good therapy strategy for 1946. Finding purpose and meaning in your life and finding meaning in your suffering. Now that's 1946. It's now 2022. I've done therapy for a while. I've talked about this in my other podcast and my course. I don't think we talk about purpose and suffering anymore. I think it's a long, long forgotten concept because I think what we've done in our culture is we've taught people to avoid suffering. No one ever says to you, enjoy your depression, find purpose in it. No one says that. No one says find purpose in your anxiety or your trauma. No one says that. What we want to do is eradicate. Think about the pandemic. Think about the cost to us. We see people less often in person now. We communicate so much through electronic means. We've lost connection. And the sad thing is we were already losing connection because of technology. So there's almost a cruel irony here. But how many of us are thinking about the understanding and the purpose that can occur from what we're going through? I mean, isn't it possible that all of our suffering might teach us something and might make it more purposeful when we're able to see people face to face more often? I think so, but we don't teach that. But this book serves as a reminder that we can find purpose in suffering, whatever the suffering is. And in this day and age right now, in this pandemic, which has affected me and my friends, more than ever, we need to find purpose in this because there is purpose to be found. Hey, this is Eric Nance here by the Dark Side of Therapy, and welcome to my office where I do telehealth with a number of clients in Minnesota and North Dakota. I call this my home for 8 to 12 hours a day, and as you can see, it very much speaks to me. As always, if you like this video, please like and please comment, and please also subscribe. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and if you have any other content ideas, we'd love to hear those too. Again, this is Eric Nance with the Dark Side of Therapy.